Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to hear. It's great to see everybody. I'm Katherine. This is Inga Lāce. This is Tetiana Khodakivska. And also online on Zoom, we have Oleksiy Sai, Nikita Kadan, and Ksenia Nouril. Hey, everybody. So this is a hybrid person event, and we may only have technical excitement in there, but we also want to especially introduce Lesia Khomenko, who's here in person, also Ksenia Nouril, who's here in person. So we'll hear from them just after the tour. And I just want to welcome everyone, and please chat in, and we'll have an opportunity for question and answer later in the program after a conversation with the artists, curator who are joining on Zoom. So first we're going to start with Inga and Tetiana, and they're going to show a little bit of the exhibition here. Yeah, I'm having just one. I can do something that is and April, sorry. So do you want to start? Yes. That's probably the way the minutes. One goes through. Because other person's very cross-week experience, it's not exactly what we wanted. We just want to perform, which is like walking on the exhibition. One, two.
Can you switch on this?
Okay, yeah. No. Okay, no.
So 1, 2, 3. Can you hear us? Yes, you're not very beautiful.
I should be able to hear you.
No? 1, 2. Okay, anyway,
They should be able to hear us.
1, 2. Okay, let's start with
you know what? Yosha has he's unmuted.
No, that shouldn't make a difference.
No, don't unmute. I just wonder if it has anything to do with any of this input output through and everything's turned on. Just wondering if all the volumes are out on all those.
Yeah, everything was working. I don't know what happened with the.
They should hear us. Someone wrote in chat that they heard something. Muted. Tonia's muted.
Yeah, she's muted.
But so she won't go on.
We were getting that crazy feedback.
Exactly. Someone just, if you look in the chat, someone said they heard someone say they should be audible. Did you say that, or did someone there say that? Do you have a mic back there? Here that should be working. But then.
We can hear you discussing there. Maybe we can just point that microphone to them.
Hello to people on Zoom and trusted the patients. Were you able to do that?
Not, yeah, I know. I'm not muted because then they're not able to hear anything. And I muted it when she was talking, but we still had some weird feedback. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you have her turn her camera on or her mic on, and I'll turn this down. All right. Okay.
Celebrate what is there in terms of cultures, what is that diversity of culture, what is that resistance to the culture, that non-conformity the culture and the thing that has existed not only during the war, but during the last kind of movements, either, of the last kind of full-scale invasion or from 2014. But at the same time, there is like a whole genealogy of that, those kind of practices. And I think for the curators, the artists, and also for me, somehow it was important to just let that speak and let that be in the space. And of course, so we could talk about that timeline of how non-conformity, how it is visible here. And just maybe one thing is that kind of behind that wall, there is one room that we will come to in the very end. So there are some sort of physical works, and maybe that wall is also interesting because it kind of marks that moment kind of before the Soviet Union, and this is already like almost after. I mean, this is really the end of the 80s, this first projection.
It's basically built on the exposition is built in circle, and as Inga said, it starts from here and it ends here in the circle in that small area. And I think that Ksenia Malykh will talk more about this, about like art history of this and what they was trying to show with selection. But just a few words, that it's basically like the most important moments of Ukrainian fight. So it's just before 90s, like 2 years before 90s, after years before 91, when Ukraine became independent. And then 2004, the first revolution, 2014, the second revolution, and then 2014 when the war started in the eastern part of Ukraine. So this is all this part of the room, and all this part of the room, it's the current works of Ukrainian artists starting from 24 February. So in this work, that's what is happening basically right now. And again, I think that Ksenia will talk more about what is going on with Ukrainian art right now, because there are actual exhibitions the artist like working and transforming this reality. And so just to start, and it will end in that small room with a kind of background of all of it. That's why there is only one physical reflector.
Right. We can go there.
So let's talk about this one. So now we are going quickly about some of the work. So what is very interesting about this first screen here, that here you can see how the art and artists interconnected with time, because so this is the 88 and the like going closer to independence, the artists like were thinking and reflecting on what on their identities stepping out from the Soviet time. So, but as you will see in all these 4 works, it's also connected with Ukrainian land and Ukrainian history, because, for example, this specific work is referring to 15th century of the Cossack area and Getmans that are tagging. And you will see like 2 things here, like it's always very joyful, this period very joyful, and there are a lot of irony in this. Irony and sometimes is self-irony. And so this is a reflection on what is Ukraine. So it's not about like Soviet thing, it's about Ukrainian history. And the same in the next work of the liberty damage that is done. You will see the photo of the performance in Kiev, and the name of that performance was the City of Immortal People. And again, the performance was at 88, so 2 years of Ukraine became independence. And of course, he was talking about some other world, but it's kind of symbolic that it starts from City of Immortal People and from Kiev. That, yeah, I'm from Kiev, and that's very symbolic to me.
Yeah, but basically this kind of it's important to have some works that kind of come before the independence, basically talking about the fact that this contemporary art emerged sort of before anti-Soviet, through this kind of anti-Soviet actually manifestations. It's not like contemporary art started just like in the 90s, but actually there is that genealogy that leads you back, and that, as Tetiana mentioned, often goes through humor, irony, or certain kind of resistance. And okay, so here, yes, here we got the second work that Tetiana talked about. And maybe you want to tell them.
Yes, so this is the later damage, and this is a photo from his performance. And what is really interesting that so this is the name of the City of Immortal People, the name of performance. And the location where it is in Kiev, it's very close to another historical location where the name is the Golden Gate. And that historical location, it's the oldest architectural remaining in the whole East Europe. And it goes back to 10th century. And this understanding of art that Ukraine has such a long history, it's very important for us today when a lot of people don't really know when Ukraine actually never existed. So, you know, in 88, Ukrainian modern artists already referred to the 10th century when Ukraine was already, it was establishment. That's very interesting for me, this interconnection of time and artist in time. So as we will see through a lot of works that this reflection on what is going on now, but also understanding and background what was happening to Ukraine and the fights that Ukraine had before, and also like liberating fights.
Yeah, and also this city of immortality, or this kind of, you could connect the niche to the movement of cosmism that artist Nikita Kadan has also done in a way, also talking about that those ideas of cosmism that are not only kind of emerging in the 19th century in Russia, but also you could see different kind of references to that in Ukraine and elsewhere across Central Eastern Europe. And maybe we can go here.
Yes, so this is this. Here we go, and also in the 90s. And there are several artists here who are reflecting on the also, it's kind of ironical transformation of and kind of satire probably on the Soviet art. And you will see two artworks here that connecting the city as here and also the village here. And this is important moment now because this is very here in this gallery now very shifting reality. So because of this artwork constantly changing, you never see the same exhibition, and you never feel kind of confident or stable because as also in Ukraine, everything is changing every second. So this is supposed to be every time different when you just turn your head. So make sure it maybe come back and then go one more time. So we will see more artwork. It's a 50 artwork from 40 artists. And this artist is Arsen Savado. It was his, you can say, like a provocating performance with photos. And the meaning of that was that there are signs and numbers on each of these photos that's done on the cemetery with this fashion clothing. There is a price of this fashion. And usually at that time, it's also 88 in Ukraine, this price was like 1 month's payment for like middle payment in Ukraine. And I think it's the same like this. And this combination of the cemetery impermanence and also like irony of what we are paying, what we are living for somehow. It's always it's again going. It's again kind of emphasizing that irony and satire in some way.
Yeah, and also talking about really the the crazy moment of transition, because really the 90s, it is this moment like, yeah, when you go from broken socialism to really wild capitalism. And I think this work like really talks about that, but as many other works. And really this kind of this is just like those processes that I think we need to move forward rather quickly because we can't stop at each work.
This is the work of Alexander Woodward, and it's actually in the MoMA Museum collection, and it's repaired with the film of Eisenstein that maybe many of you saw and know in Odessa. And for me as a filmmaker, it's very interesting this thing that this is the re-edit of the scene of the stairs, and in filmmaking, it's very important example in editing how you transform reality. So basically, by repeating the part of the steps, you make the steps really long. So, and this is important to also in relation with reflection on the Soviet time and what was that for us, like that kind of reality that is not real and that is probably what is going on somehow in Russia. So kind of matrix that looks real but actually not real, because you can modify it as you wish is propaganda or twisted information. But again, you also can see here the joyfulness. And I think this is very important before we go to that work to see how joyful this art is in 90s and also even to 2000, like 2004.
Yeah, and maybe also just to say that in this booklet, you can kind of have all these like screens and everything in here, also for those numbers, in case you would like to get back to these different kind of layers, because it is, as Tetiana said, the kind of, you sometimes lose what we were talking about and then something else jumps forward.
So this artwork of Ilya Isukov is it's referring to revolution in 2014, and you can see in this antique pose of the horse, the combination of this antique pose of the horse with actually like documental figure and all this object on this person, it's what we all had. So we all had these glasses because of the fog, because of the stuff that was used by police. We all had to protect ourselves with the Samsung, so we would use anything we can find around. And of course, you know what this is for. So that was kind of our all weapons that we had at that moment. But for us, it's very symbolic, and that's also very interesting that it's a new symbolism. So for all people in Ukraine, this object means a lot. Although you can also see here the like how light it is. And this is another work of Inga Lāce that refers to famous artwork of Yablonska, right?
Yeah, this very Soviet painter, but also like I think here we can see a lot of grain, and I think now if we think about Ukraine as being this grain bread basket of Europe, but also of Africa, and then the whole crisis that the war created in many different countries, like that work kind of really gains a very, very big significance. Maybe because we need to like finish very, very soon, we could kind of do a very quick leap.
Let's just switch on the Alyosha, if you can just take the camera so Whitney can switch off the screen. Thank you so much. I just wanted to mention that yes, it's also interesting about this work that it was showing that the happiness of the collectivization, while actually collectivization brought a lot of death to Ukrainian people. And this is a very important like reference to this. And the story is like, this is artwork, there is a lot model that. It's also like two things for me personally, right? That it was not so bright at all this time of collectivization. And the second that moment, the time we know as we left. You know, we are not there anymore, and we especially from some other historical time in the century. Maybe talk about this. So this is so this is the artwork of colorism. It is the same with spotlight, and that's for me it's like incredibly conceptual and strong. So it's a photo of the war in 2014, starting from 2014. But we see only part of this. This purpose that sometimes we cannot see the whole picture, and even sometimes with the newspapers, through magazines, and through reporters, we see only one side, right? Not even side, right? It's a wrong word, but we don't see the whole picture, and we need to constantly do this effort to step out and you see, and it's like it's a series. Sometimes you see only spotlight, sometimes you see what is outside, but it's never the whole picture. So for me, it's like reminding constantly that whatever I read in, whatever I see, especially it's important for the reporters from outside that come into Ukraine. They want to show only, like sometimes blood, dead people, but without like comprehensive understanding of what's actually going on. And it's a reflection on that moment, and it's done in collaboration with the Ukrainian writer and poet Kadan. You maybe know him, and he actually is going to be in New York soon. And it's very funny that he's also Ukrainian sex symbol, and I think it's
Oh, wow.
it talks a lot about the country, and the poet is also a sex symbol of the country. And be sure to maybe, I don't know if you'll do reading in landscape. And also on the screen, we will see shortly two works of Nikita Kadan, our curator that is present today, and maybe he can talk after about this. One is via the prize, and another one is referring to the but it's referring to the moment in Soviet times when somebody was going against the system, and for example, they would print some article with your name. So at that moment, you don't reprint all the books, you will just cover post your name in the book and cover your face in case there is a photo. And so that series, and Nikita can talk more about this. We see that that shadowy figure, but also you kind of start seeing the face that was covered with this blackness. I think it will appear here, and we'll go back to this.
Exactly, but then we could just spend a moment looking at this work by Ksenia Nouril. Valentina has this daily practice of drawing, like really you follow her on social media, you see regular drawings coming out. And she would comment the situation, what is happening in the war, you can see in her drawings. And then if some other information comes or someone comments, I think she would also like strike it out and like make her drawing like different. And so it's like a very active, I think, participatory practice. And this was, she started to make after like Maidan and Crimea occupation and Donbas occupation, because basically her mother lived in the Donbas region and she stayed there over the occupation time. And these are these kind of, and they were happening in that territory at that time. And she called her Nika Andreevna or Strawberry Andreevna. And the very, you know, and sometimes there would be this comment of like, oh, I went to the graveyard today because there the phone reception is better, you know, and things like that. Or like what happens with her plants. But basically the very sad story is that in 2019, she died on the kind of crossing. So yeah, I mean the blog post, yeah, not by the killed by the soldiers, but just of the stroke. You can imagine that this kind of life can create stress. Yeah, I mean beyond imaginable. And yeah. So should we go quickly? You worked there. You worked about this country. Because I think many of you heard Mariupol, and that's this article wrong. And when Mariupol was occupied, he was in Mariupol, and he was hiding in the basement in the shelter. And that's where he did these sketches, like on the very small pieces of papers. And then in the months when he put the sled, he out of that sketches he did these articles. So it's all based on his own experience of that months, the terrible, scary months in Mariupol, and that's the thing is, for me, you know, that this art is here now and it's happening now. I think it's also showing the interconnection of artists and time, and that, you know, like back to this conversation, that if artists or sportsmen out of politics, behind the politics or not, like over here we see that this is a reflection of what is going on, and it's not somewhere, you know, like sometimes someone would say that art is behind it.
I don't see it behind, I see it very much inside. And like here we are going, you see these posters, and so this is only emphasizing all these artists. When the war started, they started to do mostly posters. So there was this huge chat, and it was also back in 2013 when the revolution was, like we were all like artists, filmmakers, musicians, we were all interconnected and collaborating with each other. Like what message should we put out? What should we talk about? And so in this chapter, also with artists and filmmakers, like thinking what is the message, what should be projected now outside. So people, for example, in New York, when we would go on protest, we would contact Lesia or someone from Ukraine and ask, okay, do for us this, like, what do you want us to say? Like, what is important for you to say now? And another very important, like, part of why these posters are so important is that they, what you are going through, it's very difficult to explain, and it's something that never happened before for you, and you kind of feel yourself absolutely surreal, horrible situation that you can look at. It's like absolute dreams that you cannot look up. But what you feel sometimes it's so strange that to see that some artists also feel the same. Like that you can see it in the sport, okay, they also feel anger, and to feel anger is okay. You know, or they cry, and to cry it's okay, or they feel this like whatever emotion you feel to find that in artists that you know and that you trust, it's very emotionally supporting, and it's again showing how the artists and community are together, not only artistic community inside, but also together with the people that are going like on everyday basis through all of this. And it's very helpful, I think, in those in both ways in this connection.
Yeah, I think it's for example, one of the artists, Nikita Kadan, who is creating a poster every day. So basically, I think it's, I mean, we could call it a therapy, we could call it like, yeah, that he basically needs to create this and to put out this one poster a day, he shares it on Facebook, and then whoever wants and or needs to go on demonstration, they can print it out and practically use it. So that is this kind of other wall that actually shows something on a practical side. But
a lot of this became open source, so everyone could use it, and the same with music. Like the composer, for the famous composer, will put music on the side, so you can use it, for example, for some films or documentaries. And the same was in the footage. We have this collaborative community filmmakers that was like from 2013 that started back in 2013, when everybody is. Because we understood that we need to document what's going on, and because we, like everybody was documenting something, and we understood that we just can do much more with the people together. So the same is filmmakers company started to share the footage and make it open so some people can use it for like for TV news or for like. Now it's really different because it's in 1 year, like a different organization. But in the beginning of the war, it was very important that we already had that knowledge how to organize ourselves. Like what should we do? It was very also kind of favor of us. We want to start immediately doing something. And there are also posters on the other wall. On this wall, you will see this is the work. So this is the work of Lesia Khomenko that is present today, and we will move now with the conversation with Ksenia Nouril and the other artwork
here, this is my Oleksiy Sai, who was actually here when we were installing the whole pro, and we really did a lot together. And basically, he will join us on Zoom, so we can kind of slowly move to those conversations with Lesia and with Oleksiy and with all the artists. And just maybe a small glimpse into this room here. You can come with me quickly. Yeah, so when we spoke about the second behind that wall, then kind of behind that wall here, we have his earlier work. So we think that the person who worked on some of his design, as we see here, it was also realized. So there is an actual geotechnosphere that was actually installed in Popasna. So it was non-conformity, but at the same time also working with the government. And there was not really, so it's not either or, but at the same time, there would be this whole body of work where he would imagine these different kind of worlds and different kind of things that remind us of modern data storage, for instance, which is kind of an amazing body of work. And then
It's the architect that was doing the city of immortal.
Yeah.
And collection is wrong, but for the number is also it's biosphere.
Some of those artists, like Nikita Kadan, who is there, and others, they wanted to kind of, because in the 90s, there would be this neglect to different things, Soviet, and basically the atmosphere was lost. And then when they wanted to reinstate it, and they agreed, everyone agreed, the city, and and it was almost about to be reinstated. And then basically war started, and the city doesn't exist anymore. So it's actually a really sad story. And then we also have this bird that came to us, not from Kiev this time, but from Vienna, where it's located in the collection of Elizabeth, who kindly borrowed it to us. So this is Alla Horska, and she's actually a bit earlier voice. So there's physics definition, but also Alla Horska, and this is this kind of the only very original drawing that we have. And she has done many monumental works, but also she's part of the 60th generation that is extremely anti-Soviet, being activist, and also, of course, her career suffering from that.
But not only her career, but it's now believed that she was healed by HB, and it's also to show that this fight and the Soviet and the imperialistic have a very concrete base in Ukrainian art, and that's why this only one art is physical here. And, it's also to start conversation, but it's probably time to talk about Ukrainian, Estonian, Ukrainian art, but not as Soviet art or not as Russian and some Slavic arts, but to see that we actually have what to talk about. Like we have what, and I'm really curious what Ksenia will tell about this as an art historian, because I'm not, so I can invent something probably. But for me, it was the first time in my life, although I know many of these artists personally, when I could see how wide is the Ukrainian modern art, how many instruments they are using, and how it's interconnected with time, and how it's interconnected with the world also. It's not separated. So let's now move to Ksenia, to the chairs.
Hi. Can you hear me? Hi all. Thank you for coming and thank you for interest. I have some slides. Slides with the same picture that you can see, but it will be easier to comment them. First of all, thank you for this amazing tour. I barely can add something to this information that you heard, and I'm very glad that we have such a great hosting institution and those amazing guides. So I'd like to share some slides so that you already seen, but I will comment a little bit. First of all, I have to tell that this story is this show is very curatorial, and this show is very opinionated. So it cannot be like a representative story of whole Ukrainian art history of contemporary art. But we don't have like a conventional art history of contemporary art of Ukraine. So we don't have it. So like every one of us, every actor, every artist, art historian, art curator can make their own version of art history of Ukraine, and we do it. So now you can see one of the results of that. And as for me, I perceive this project and this exhibition as a artistic work of Oleksiy Sai or a curatorial work of Oleksiy Sai. I know that he will not be agree with me, but this all this form, it's like a three-dimensional cartoon movie about history of Ukrainian contemporary art. It's, for me, it is artistic decision and an artistic form, and which is actually amazing, because history of Ukrainian contemporary art cannot be linear. It's like a multi-linear, so multi-lines is holding everything up together. Because if we even try to ask a question when the history of contemporary art of Ukraine began, there is no right answer for that, because in other cities, depending on history of these cities, the starting point of contemporary art was in different years. For example, in Kharkiv, we can set the point that history of contemporary Ukrainian art was started with the practice of Boris Mikhailov, which is started at the end of 1960s. If we are talking about Odessa conceptual artists, they started at the end of 70s. If we are talking about Kiev, about Kiev's something that we now call so-called new wave or Park-Commune circle of artists, it began at the end of 80s. So we have like a different stories in different cities, and we have not easy but unique and interesting history of our art. So now you can see one of the most important, I'm sure, for all of us in Ukrainian art, it's the work of Oleksiy Sai. It's something that I will not tell you exact story about this work, and nobody knows exact stories, because it's always about myth, about some reflections of reality, about dreams, about about some links to other artistic works. But if we are talking about Oleksiy and we will try to localize him, we can talk that he is from Dnipro, but then he studied in Kiev, and he was one of this Porcomun circle. And if we're talking about some brands in Ukrainian contemporary art, he can be called as belonging to new Ukrainian way. And it's like something that we can talk about, something that was not really political, or those artists of those circles were not reacting to some certain political events, but their main, this work was, for example, was created in 1990. It was 3 years before his tragical death, tragical for still for all of us, but I think you can feel this atmosphere of those times of something intuition, what we can see in art. Another work is from Alexander Roitbur, artist from Odessa, and he made this work when he was on the residency in Munich, in Germany, in Bavaria, and this work dedicated to a king, which was very popular in this city and still very popular. So his image was everywhere on the postcards, in city infrastructure, in the city visual materials, and now we can look at this work and see this deconstruction of imperial narrative. So he made it literally. He bought a lot of these postcards and printed materials with the image of this king, and he cut it to pieces and made a collage, and then he made a series of collages, and then he made a series of paintings that was based on these collages. So it was like something like a practice of that, what we now can call of deconstructed of imperial narratives. And all of these, when we were talking about this talk this night, we were talking about that I will try to make some line, but now I understand that that will be something more close to mosaics. So this is another piece to this mosaics. And Fripulia, that were already mentioned today, and all these works was mentioned. And this is our cosmist artist, and it's also another perfect moment to ask ourselves the questions how Russia tried to appropriate this brand of cosmism art, that we can delete the word Russian from cosmic art, because we also can find another examples, and not only in Ukrainian art. So this artist, we can see him on this picture, Fedor Tetianich. He was thinking if we can talk about him from contemporary point of view, from our days. He was thinking about future lives, and this work was really relevant when pandemic started. So it's about some structure where person could live in a safe place. So it's a biotechno sphere, something where person can live and be safe and travel and to move and so on. So this concept, I think, will be relevant, for a very long time. And but also about Fripulia, I wanted to admit that from starting point from 24th of February, I talk a lot about Ukrainian art and about contemporary art. And the most funniest question that I ever were asked, it was about after lecture, people from German city Hanover asked me, they said it was very interesting. It's very interesting and good art, but can you tell us, is it official or underground? So for me, it was it was really hilarious and funny. But if we talk about Fripulia, because this is 1989, so there were actually Soviet Union, but we perceive this work as a part of history of Ukrainian contemporary art. It's contemporary artist, and he looks pretty relevant. So if we talk about him, he was partially included in official systems. So he was trying to work with official system, but it was impossible not to not be connected at all. So he even tried to make some official things and just to make some works for in cooperation with government or with official structures. So that is always something. Do not try to romanticize this too much. And this work of Oleksiy Sai, it calls Reunion, and it also was created in 1989. It's a very important year for whole European history. It was the year when the wall falls. So this work is something really really historical now, because it's about all this all this narrative about brother sister folks, all these neighbors relations, that now we can feel it ourselves as something really painful. And this work is really referring to history of Ukrainian arts, like history of very old times, and it has a lot of elements and a lot of irony, and it's like something about all this. It was like a starting point for Oleksiy Sai, and then for their project together with Mykola Matsenko and Nazprom. They were, in one way, they were destructing all these imperial narratives of Soviet Union, and also at the same time they were simultaneously very critique to what was happening in the first years of Ukrainian independence, when it was starting point of creating a new country with a new visual values, with a new visual signs and symbols. So it was like a first step. It was this work. And this work of Maxim Mamsikov is also were created in the beginning of 90s. And as for me, this work is dedicated to some psychological experience that artists of those time had opportunity to discover for themselves. They could live in squats, they could be free, they could have parties, and this was like, for me, it's like a visual diary of this psychedelic experience that they had at the time. And this work of Zhanna Kadyrova, it was later created, but also connected with the Soviet past, and for sure, a lot of artists of nowadays are trying to rethink our Soviet past, trying to reflect it deeply, to find the proper place for it, to find the proper form how to deal with that. So this this work, you can see portraits of Zhanna in like a classical Soviet images of different classical Soviet professions, like accountant, librarian. So, but it's made with a huge talent and with a huge irony regarding to these images. So the way of refereeing and to rethinking of Soviet past, there were different approach of that, and Jana choose the most ironic and the most engaging for public. And this work of Mykola Matsenko, it's that was I telling you after the work of Oleksiy Sai reunion, because it's work about from, if we take it really serious, it was like a critical work about all this new image of new independent country of Ukraine, all these buildings, all these dealing with past without no thinking about architectural heritage, just building something new, something bright, something kitschy. And it's like a critical approach to what situation was in the beginning of Ukrainian independence. But on the other hand, we can see like a huge love of it, of all these kitschy colors and heraldic composition. And also there is a city, and this is a village, something even more nice. And this work is depicting the very center of capital of Ukraine, of Kiev, is Maidan. And Maidan after reconstruction, it was like a painful moment for a lot of us, because this reconstruction, it was very long process, and it was not like very transparent. We didn't know to what we shall expect after this reconstruction. And first time before all our revolutions, it looked really kitschy, and I think this work of Matsenko is a perfect visual example of how all of us was seeing, was perceiving this this new architectural miracle that we could see. But after all our two revolutions, we just now, for us, this place means absolutely another thing. And if we mention our relation to our past, as for me, as if we now look at this series of Arsen Savadov and with collaboration with Alexander Kharchenko, this series of fashion on the graveyard, with these models, with this fashion faces and poses and dresses and everything. As for me, what I can add to what our amazing guides told about this series, as for me, it was something like answer for Western expectation from Soviet, post-Soviet artists. So all this image of women, all this image of exotic situation, about beauty and about something really provoking. And as for me, now we can perceive it as an answer for these expectations, visual expectations. And if we are talking about Ilya Yusupov, it's always a mix about legends, myth, radio news, TV news, some city legends, memes, and he created memes himself with his works, because he was working with living archive, with up-to-date situation, with something that was born just 5 minutes ago, and with his personal, intimate myth and stories. And it's not like with this work, we can easily understand what's going on. It's about Maidan. It's about revolution of dignity, because we can see these elements of DIY things that people were using to fight. So it's immediately understandable that this is about Maidan. This work is it's a direct reference to work of Tetiana Yablonska, historical artist and very important for Kiev and Ukraine. And he made nearly a copy, but without real faces of these women that were depicted. And the other example of his work, but this work, like a most recent, this work can open his method for us, because we can see the story, how he was evacuating his children from dangerous situation in the beginning of full-scale invasion. So this work can really, because for all of us in Ukraine, it's absolutely clear what is happening here. He was trying to put all his kids and all their stuff inside of the car and going very fast and trying not to die with them. So and all this.
And he rode with Russian tanks in front of the column of Russian tanks by the road, and this aircraft battle was over him. It's all surreal but real. Sorry, I'm muted again.
No, Lesia, thank you very much. Thank you, because you are like a direct listener of this story, because I know it from you. But it's really first time when I can really understand all senses of work of Ilya Yusupov, because everything else, it's always like something like a mystery, and you need to know some personal things about him to understand fully what is depicted. But in this work is for us, the sense of this work is super open. And another artist who included a lot of elements of a private, personal, and very intimate, and some common legends and mythology. It's Stanislav Voloslavsky, Stas Voloslavsky. And so we can see it now, and he appeals to some forms of like very DIY things, like something that were used in the public spaces of course, Soviet system, like in schools, in universities, in all kind of factories and everything else, where it was used like a tool of communication with the team, with the staff, and he appropriates all these forms, and then he add more new forms. He add the visual language of tattoo masters, of language of jail, language of some kind of singers and actors, and so he made like a total mythology in one place, in one series, in one picture, and he uses a lot of text, and like he uses very poor materials for that, but the works are really spectacular. And a lot of humor and ironic, of course. And this works of Vlada Relko, she usually uses this approach as like a diary painting. So she, when some turbulent events is happening, she reflects them with painting on daily basis, and she is trying to catch this image that can depict what is happening, and it's usually and often about body and about body experience, and we can see a lot of things that is very easy to recognize now in our informational field. And as Vlada said, that First, she made this, it names Kiev's diary. It was, this diary was created during Maidan, and she started it like in the first days of Maidan, and she ended when all these news feeds were like going down. She understood that news are already repeated, there's nothing really new is happening, so she can end this process of diary paintings. And another artist, Tetiana Khodakivska, she also often uses this format and this approach of painting, of daily painting, like a diary, but also, as for me now, Aleftina is super valuable in terms of communication, because she tries to find the most simple, the most democratic language in her drawings, and to explain to as much people as possible what is happening. So she tries to make it for herself, to understand, to reflect, to understand deeper, and then with her paintings she tries to make it visible for as much people as possible. And another diary approach is this graphical series from artists who spent a lot of days in occupation in Mariupol, and this for one hand is documents, it's graphic works, but for another hand it was a tool for him to self-therapy, all this cruel things that happened around him and with him. And this works of Katherine Carl, would not call this diary, but this works that she was making after 24th of February. It's like a reaction, something that she really quickly was making, like a reaction on what is happening. And she was trying to continue topic with what she is working. She was working before 24th of February with the topic of hero, with the topic of rethinking heroes of antique Greece, for example, for everything that we know as a common knowledge, as something that we do not question. So she was trying to question all these phenomena of heroes, and who is right and who is wrong, who is strong. And this series was like a natural prolongation of her practice. Another series of also something as a diary, because it's also reaction. It's Alina Yakubenko, her series that depicts some like the most prominent, the most picturesque images that were changing and growing and living in our informational field, because it's symbols and images of Russian soldiers, of all these situations regarding and during the war. And she was making a lot of paintings, very, as for me, is very picturesque and very deep and interesting, with all trying to catch these symbols, trying to catch these visual symbols of this time. And Oleksiy Sai, work of Oleksiy Sai, I also can talk about them as something as diary, because on the first days, on the first month of full-scale invasion, we were totally, every one of us were totally in our information information field, in our telegrams, Facebook and Google, everything where we can get news. And there were a lot of photographs of all these damages. And Oleksiy was trying to make his own archive, but this archive is only visual because he simplified these photos because we don't know where it was, but it's something really that was happening. So it's like also, as for me, it's like a method of simplifying and finding like a perfect simple form that can symbolize it. But you cannot make one picture that can describe all these days of everyday scrolling and seeing the mostly the same pictures of something what is burning. So Oleksiy made like something like a series of diary, but I think he stopped in some day. How many, Oleksiy, how many drawings you made at the final of this series?
Probably 400.
400.
Little less than 400. Yeah,
Yeah.
I stopped already.
I think I hope that there will be less and less and then zero reasons to make such a diary.
Yeah.
And it's a real pity that you cannot see these works in real. I hope someday you will see it because this physicality of this work, this special paint that Oleksiy, it's like how it calls like a rubber paint.
Yeah, some kind of rubber. Yeah, liquid rubber
Yes.
paint. Yeah.
Yes, this physicality of these works are really, really impressive. And the work of Nikita Kadan, who's also somewhere here in Zoom, I think it's something that I don't know what to comment here. It's absolutely something that all we relate and all we understand, and it's like a reminder that we can talk a lot about politics, about economy, about values, but people are the price at the end, and people's lives. And also, this exhibition includes older series of Nikita Kadan, which is dedicated to work of Alexander Rodchenko. He Soviet photographer who made photo portraits of Uzbekistan, Soviet, like top political management of country, and it was made in 1937, 1938. Oh no, it was made in 1934, but in 1937, a lot of them, some of them were repressed. So it was dangerous to keep their portraits even in this photo album at your apartment because it was really dangerous. And he brushed their faces of those who were like a public enemies. So then Rodchenko can keep this photo album, his work, this photo album at his apartment. And Nikita Kadan took these portraits and make his versions of these portraits, but also he added something. He added this first layer, and this could be like a spirits of history. But Nikita is here. If he would like, he will add something. And also Lesia Khomenko is there, and this is her work from the series Max in the Army. And as for me, Lesia is a very strong artist who immediately found in this extreme situation, she found her point where she could continue her practice, because Lesia before 24th of February, she was working with deconstruction of Soviet tradition of painting, of Soviet school of painting. She was deconstructing painting as an object, as a surface, as a volume. And then she worked also with the construction of image, with the politics of image, and politics of image in Ukraine changed after 24th of February, and it is still can be something dangerous because image, it's information, and it's information about some personal data. It could be information about some certain places or certain objects, which can be dangerous for both sides. So Lesia received these photographs from her husband, Max Robotov, and it was not only one photograph, I just showing one. And she made this painting from forbidden image, from dangerous image, from image that had another consistency, like image that it became another political tool, that became something dangerous, that image that shifted its role to something another. And so Lesia continues her practice, continues her way of thinking and rethinking what is image about and how image changes, and image changes still. And last slide of my presentation is about some like 2 photographs of our really deeply loved by us series of Viktor Pokidanits. And it's something, if there is something like Ukrainian soul, I think Ukrainian soul is somewhere here in all these approaches, because Viktor Pokidanis is also a brilliant painter and artist with a big aura, but this series, it's something that he is making sustainable for Losha. I don't remember how many years, I think 5 or more. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
but we really, yeah. So Viktor Pokidanis, he's creating like every time with an amazing fantasy and creativeness. He's making new and new approaches to create shoes from DIY methods with some of materials that he can get uh, around him. So it's, and every time it's so ironic and so deep and so very hard to explain, really. I think it would be really nice, Oleksiy, if we ask some of students of art history to write a real like scientific article with analyzing of each layer of each version of these DIY shoes of Viktor Pokidanis.
it's
So
just touchy. Yeah.
yes, it's really something touchy. So as you can see, our history of Ukrainian contemporary art is really something like mosaics, not something like a line. And every time we can tell it from another angle, from as we wish, because it's something really alive. And we don't have like something, even like a museum of contemporary art, we don't have it still. So we are still flexible to find our own ways to reflect our history and to create our lines as we want and understand. So, and thank you again for interest to our art, and please try to find your lines. This exhibition is a perfect space to combine. So, and thank you. I'm finishing, and I don't know who is next to speak, so I'm passing microphone to organizers.
I would say is Ukrainian contemporary art between the two revolutions. So prior to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I would say you could periodize Ukrainian contemporary art around between the two revolutions, that being the Orange Revolution and the Maidan in 2014. I've researched and written extensively on work made between those two revolutions on some of the artists that are with us today, both in person and online. I think it's really prescient that Ksenia and Kiev, her presentation did not include work by so many of the collectives that have been working in Ukraine over the last few decades. Some of which, like Khomenko here, as well as Nikita Kadan on Zoom, have been a part of. So that being most prominently Oleksiy Sai, Revolutionary Experimental Space, as well as other curatorial collectives like the Futurada, and also other additional collectives, Open Group, and many other, Sotka, many that we can name as well. And I think an important point that Ksenia and Kiev also drew out was this kind of hyper-localism and the kind of artistic communities that have developed across Ukraine, not just in Kiev, but in Lviv, Odessa, Donetsk, Kharkiv, etc. Over, in my case, over the 2000s into the 2020s. Prior to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, I would say that we could think about art and collective action through the lens of antagonism. Antagonism being a kind of concept that really promoted a kind of democracy, so that democracy would be birthed through opposition, through having a group of people, let's say in our case, artists, pushing up against something that was antagonistic, right? And so that antagonism between the two forces creates a positivism, or a kind of, in a political sense, a kind of democracy, right? And while unfortunately situations have changed, I still remain hopeful, because I remain I maintain belief in artists, right? And while some of the collective actions that were so prevalent during the 2000s, 2010s, between the revolutions, are not necessarily the case anymore, because so many artists have dispersed. And you were sitting here with Lesia, who has been present here in the United States for almost thus far in the nearly entire period of the war, as well as artists elsewhere. I know Nikita had previously been in Berlin. I'm not sure where he is joining us from today, but I think the belief in art still allows us to remain hopeful. And so I want to turn it over to Lesia to go in depth on some of her works, and I'll be sort of interjecting and commenting and engaging with her. I'm going to back a little bit to see her a little better. But hopefully we'll talk about some major key themes in her practice, as well as relationship to her collective work, as well as her historical underpinnings, and that will give you a more in-depth perspective on at least her practice in the context of Ukrainian contemporary art today. So thank you. I'm very honored to be here, very humbled in fact to be here with all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. And thank you a lot. Ksenia Malykh introduced me with her book is one of the projects. And thank you, Ksenia Nouril, to mention this connectivity in Ukraine, because I very shortly will comment it, because it builds a context for my personal practice as well. It's based on it that most of us, as an artist, we are living several biographies at the same time. So we are curators, we are text writers, we are educators, we are gallery runners. All of this builds a context for our practice in Ukraine. But the situation, as Ksenia Malykh mentioned, that we still don't have a music for contemporary art with some clear built collection as an anthology. It means that we have a very fragile institutional landscape. It makes a lot of sense to understand our kind of practice. Our practice quite narrational, because it needs to be narrational, because it's like serve a little bit in a role, like self-institutionalized, maybe, or something like this. And I will very, very briefly jump on my latest projects. Please could you show slides? First works, I will jump very briefly because it's present here and Ksenia Malykh already represented and fully explained. It's a very quite realistic image of my husband. It's very first work I just left to live with my family, and the choice of depicting it was based on the idea of the merger of the civilian people with a military person. Like all our society turned to be soldiers, and my husband, he's an media artist and musician. Just occasionally he is now major lieutenant and managing the wing. And then, please, next slide. And it's just extending of the series commissioned by the curator, for Venice Biennale's huge scale architecture-based installation, based on paintings with Max and his colleagues in army, with different professions like engineer, chemist, lawyer, and etc. And they already have done. It's the first months of the war, but they still didn't really receive any equipment. So they like both they individual focus. And please, next slide. And what I'm doing now, I'm analyzing and I'm using not just personal archive. It's a big difference how I'm working with the photography, because as Ksenia Malykh mentioned that I'm working with painting and the objects, but divide the surface, the image, and the body itself of the painting. And this is about the image. And before full-scale invasion, I used my own archive of soldiers because my studio was facing to the military unit, and I was finding them, and I was thinking about the commonness of the use of artists in a shooter. And then the situation completely changed because it's not allowed anymore to take photo of soldiers. And I'm working with this context, and I'm taking images from internet. The soldiers are making photos of themselves, but obscuring faces in backgrounds of security reasons, not be targeted, and we have the regulation that it's not permitted to take photos of soldiers anymore. And I'm thinking about self-representation of the war, of the soldiers, and how they build the image of the hero, this anonymity facing this importance to make a point of everyone, of every heroes. And I'm referencing to the period of 50s of the post-World War II, and this Stalinistic propaganda period, in which I think it's a prototype of fakes, this painting, post-war painting. So I'm a little bit mixing it up because I'm working and constructing all this period of Soviet figurative painting. And the jump of
Sorry, we kind of planned to have like more of a dialogue, but obviously the mic situation prevents that. But no, I think this is a great point for us to just pause for a second, because you said so many really important things. I want to back up for just another moment and key in Lesia's earlier work, which involved large scale figurative painting, portraiture, Also looking back on the history of Soviet painting, your Giants series, I'm thinking of in particular, so all of you can look that up online or see her website and Instagram. Those works were very similar in style in a way. They were depicting everyday individuals, you know, older people, children, families, men, women in ordinary dress and ordinary clothes, absolutely unadorned. And what's striking for me is while your subjects have changed, but you are still looking at the everyday. Unfortunately, your everyday has changed drastically. So it's not, you know, the babushka and the kids and the, you know, kind of people hanging up laundry in their yards and, you know, walking to the market and the store and, you know, being kind of very quiet life. But now we have this military presence. And what's very interesting, which I think you're bringing up a little bit, is this idea of kind of self-affirming or self-identity. So you went from taking these photographs yourself or, you know, seeking these photographs out on the internet to now having, you know, at least in the case of your husband, you know, the photographs being sent to you, thereby having the subject, your husband or whomever else he is involved with at the time, presenting themselves to you, right? So there's also a very interesting, there's something very interesting going on there vis-a-vis kind of subjectivity and the presentation and the performance of self for the camera. And then for the canvas, right? And what I think is so beautiful in terms of where we are today in what the curators here, you know, with the support of the James Gallery have really done is kind of blur these lines of medium specificity and really broken down these barriers between what is a canvas and what is a file, what is, you know, a print, and what is a image, you know, on Facebook or on the internet or wherever. And that is what, in a nutshell, your work is doing, right? That is what you are capturing, the digital, the analog, the history of realist painting, the history of social realist painting, and then, you know, selfie culture, right? And the culture of our own self-presentation in 2023.
Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, I wanted to add that for me, the concept of the cyber war is crucial, and I think that we are all living this cyber war, under the cyber war, and also because this COVID pandemic situation, and I think it's very shaped our reality. And I'm here with you in the USA, and I'm looking through the same tools as an internet on my own life. I've got this huge distance, and my role is just to point or to put some attention on some things which are available for everyone. I mean, it's my choice, like, to look on the world. And this relation between digital world and material world of the painting, also very profound. Thank you to mention it, because when I just read to you, I had a feeling that I wrote my biography because I left two huge storage of my work. I'm working like about 20 years already, you know, and I'm working with a large scale painting. So I was not sure, it was February 26th. I was not sure if it will survive. I'm still not sure which one storage is in very problematic place. So I mean, this idea to recreate a couple of works immediately to just prove myself that I'm living as an artist. You know, it's craziness of the materiality of art still prevent in our times. But this relation, I'm happy with this fiction because it's sharp. It makes this this opposition more sharp, as Tetiana mentioned at the beginning, that we are not sure which is still existing right now. Please next one by one, a few, because it's a system here. I'm preparing this work and I go more abstract. This specialization, because sometimes quality of the footage I'm using is quite not obvious, not it's blurry, and I'm using both the selfies and some video footage as well, and video footage also blurry. And with video, with still shots of video footage, it makes me crazy because I'm very deeply connected with academia, with traditional Soviet Eastern European kind of education, and it's for me very difficult to jump some other things than figuration. And I'm all my life I'm looking for methods. So this digital destroying at the same time the method to jump out of main position. I'm always criticize my background, and this paradox.
But I would just read this as just another kind of evidence of your interest in like veracity, right? You're basically telling us that you have this tradition of realism embedded in you and your pedagogy, and yet now your source material and your reality is this digital life, these digital files, and they are imperfect, right? They are pixelated, they are low quality. And so, in a way, I think your images are just, they are responding to that through the language of abstraction.
Yes, I'm happy to be here because for me, this merger of different ways of depicting is like in dialogue with abstract tradition to be here. And I'm trying not to repeat pixels literally, but just interpretate them to the language of the business. Yeah, and this most recent work I'm now preparing the show in a Cleveland Gallery in New York, and it's my most recent works, and it's really video footage, which really helps me to jump out of the figures. Next, please. Yeah, and this is also shooter, basically. Everything was pixel except legs. And next slide will be, yeah, it's 2011. My previous works when I was making a copies of the Soviet battle painting about World War II of 50s. So please next one. I was, yeah, it's original. Artists were mostly veterans of World War II. It means that they were known for sure what war is, but the problem is that it was Stalinist period, and it means that it was huge censorship in the art system. So it was censored many times before it came a piece. And can you show next, please? And I used this old Soviet album, and I was throwing them upside down, maybe to just try not to focus what happened there, just to stop understand the narration with the image, and through this deconstruct and to rethink the approaches to the war and to the history itself, which rise in the 50s because it was full of mythologization, and I think it's a few, I don't know, problematic point of what goes next of this. Not now we are like the result of this time. I think this cyber war with this propaganda machine in Russia, and now I think it's a result of that also that period. It was totally unclear what happens in this. And next. And it's also my recent social online, a brilliant artistic initiative. It's online art gallery. You could check them. Oleksiy Sai also did a big solo show there. And it was, I invented before full-scale invasion through the pandemic time because, everything goes digital. And for me as a painter, it was problematic that everything turned to be digital focused, basically bottom line. So I proposed guys to just exhibit only one work, but in the scale 1:1. It's a record of telephone. It's very small, and you could check work, but you could just only scroll it. You never will see all pieces because it's 1:1. It's a big set. So So it's about feeling presence of the work by through online, but at the same time it's about the construction. And please next slide. And this left, it's basically the work. It's 82 inches high. So it's my last shot. It's my last station in studio before I before war started. It's the war started. It's my but works with my own footage from the studio. My studio work. Yeah, so it's the last slide. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, sure. How should we do this? So you mentioned that was an artist and now he's an artist. So you know, like for me, when the new always and this is going back to digital era. Like so they always would say, okay, so 2 civilians died, or like 5 civilians died. But then at the same day, like hundreds of people in army died. But those people were actually civilian, and they didn't do the choice to become, you know, like a warrior or soldiers. So my question is, like, how does your husband feels now? Does he feel as an artist, or as a civilian, or as a soldier? Like, that how that probably changing his perception of reality, if you talk about this. It was his decision to join the territorial defense, and because he is a lieutenant, he should manage the work. He is responsible for coordination. So he learned a lot of law, and he coordinates. As he says personally himself, he said that he does the same as being the artist, but he manages not projects, but you know, bombs, amount of bombs to some group, or some places where they should sleep next day, or relation with local authorities, for example. And everything he does, he writes orders. All communication based on orders, and we are really reflecting with each other at this point. But at the same time, he's trying to make music with his guys, his groups, online, but he has not a lot of time. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't have possibility to talk with him about so a lot of things that just don't discuss about really deeply. But I know for sure that he lives like constantly by recent moment. He focusing on recent moment, not future. And I think it's very transcendental.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to go back a little bit to your comment about presence, because I think that loops in a lot of ideas that we've been talking about. I mean, the body figures so prominently in so many of the works in this exhibition, and so many of the other artists. The body is a site of heroism, the body is the site of trauma. But yeah, I think your work, because of its relationship and its engagement with scale and different kinds of scale, right? Large scale, particularly, it really reiterates that presence, yet at the same time, in the same breath, an absence, right? Your husband is not with you, he's sending you these messages, these images, these videos, and yet you're capturing him, you know, no pun intended, on the canvas. So can you talk a little bit about maybe that kind of presence, absence, the kind of tension that exists within your work, vis-a-vis the body?
You mean about the construction or about Max? Yeah, I think with Max I agree. Maybe it was to create Israeli. With scale, thank you for the question because it's important. Yes, I did almost one-to-one scale first painting, and then I did very huge ones. And it was the time of Bucha, when the terrorists, they occupied, and it was a terrible time. And the scale helped me to deal with this. And it was like screen. But then I decided maybe it's more correct to get back to the normal size, because it more relates to the people. And I want my people to look scary, basically. And I think it's the robot level looks scary. And because, that's our side of Russian propaganda creates this very against scary image of the Ukrainians. And I thought maybe that this should be like for human scary something. And I mixed everything a lot. I mixed also a year computer games of comics blockbuster. Because everything is internet at the same time, And I think that we are living in the context of everything is together, not only train, the world online, So and to recreate them to the most real scale, for me it's to get this immersive. And I still very believe in the real exhibitions, especially after pandemic. And I think the exhibition is the event, the situation, the space, three-dimensional space. So for me, the painting is always about the scale and about being the event, not just object. Right, so do we want to open it up to questions or to those online? Thank you so much, Ksenia and Lesia, thank you. And please stay there, and if Inga and Tanya want to join, and I'd like to invite, yes, here we go, Oleksiy and Nikita to offer a few comments, and also we'll move into questions from the floor as well. So I hope you can hear us. Oleksiy, would you like to offer a few comments?
Yeah, I have not much to say after all of the speakers. I just can express my feeling that we are not. Yes, we are in a situation of terror, and we are really under danger, but we are changing, and it's really we showed you some part of history of Ukrainian contemporary art, but this history is also changing right now, and yeah, I hope we will see something new, even those who are I can say there is nothing established in our lives in Ukraine. So in our art, I think it's also nothing established. It's all very alive, and yeah, I think I'm grateful that you have attention to Ukrainian art. That's all I want to say.
What is the situation now? You're still what is the situation now? You still have like this blackouts with the lights, with the light. Like how do you live and how do you find the time to do something? Like what is your everyday life?
Oh, I'm in Kiev. I'm lucky we don't have it so our life is not so difficult. It depends on the district. It depends on a house you live, but in general, it's more or less. Okay, I cannot say that I'm suffering. My daily life is a little bit more maybe boring than I to him, but thinking of having rest, I have no idea how to rest. So it's, yeah, I'm going to my studio and work and go back home again. That's my daily life.
Thank you. Maybe it's, maybe someone have questions to from like Russia or maybe if now with Oleksiy, I would like maybe to add Ksenia Malykh comment about his works, because it's he points a little bit, but it's this smoke 400 smoke. It's carpet, but carpet not because smokes are not terrible things and terrified, but because of military symbolic in a threat. He works a little bit with more easily, but in a different way, because just all friends of all the warriors just exhibit shot and posted images of sports in the city, and it was very good correction for necessary correctness. It's both sides we even the correct file next time. So then it was regulation forbidden. So our threat just point the fact that it was explosion, and they represent this piece of the sky with the just abstract shape of this smoke. So I think it's very crucial, and I think it's very, very contemporary about the recent war and about the technologies. Just the moment of 2023, 22-23, I think the technologies will go forward and new kind of images will rise. I think it's very, very about the recent war. We also to Nikita, if you are still here, Nikita with us, do you have comments? That maybe he's because it's really late now in Europe. Lesia, can you text to him? He's in the moment. If he's not any time he wants to jump in right here. So if anybody has questions, please, you can just Hi everyone. It's not a question. It's actually, I want to thank everyone who take time, efforts, resources, put together this event, particular Inga, Ksenia, Lesia, Tetiana. I know that I feel this is the same as every Ukrainian right now is representing culture, and we are all ambassadors. And I feel like all the events that here happening in New York throughout this year, and will continue happening. And I believe it's only the beginning. So I just believe everyone to have the focus, the strengths, the ideas, and not be afraid to realize them, and maybe even like, just publicize and spread the word, and that everyone is doing whatever they can in their own capacities. And I just want to celebrate the colonization of Ukrainian culture that is happening right now with everyone who is supposed to really research, put together events. That's wonderful. And thank you, James Gallery, for giving the space for this. Actually, I was thinking when all said that we don't have this Museum of Modern Art, I didn't even realize it actually we don't have, but maybe it's so because we live with this. If we don't have museum because the modern art is happening actually now, but that's what it's a very long conversation, and I think maybe we should. I would like to talk about it because I should do something because it's I think it's a problem. I don't know. Even it's really not a like Eastern Bloc problem because it's unique Ukrainian thing. I don't know.
Yeah, this would be a history that would probably touch upon things like photos and, you know, kind of experiences of transition and sort of democracy, kind of like introduction of quote unquote democracy and independence. And this is a very interesting conversation, but perhaps for a different symposium. Since after the end of the war, after the Ukrainian win, it will be one of those questions, is culture reconstruction and all actors will be involved. Yeah, I think we're very much sitting in the presence of them now. They're you, and there are those of us who are joining online, Nikita, Oleksiy, Ksenia. I mean, that is the history that's in the making. That is the, you know, after the victory, that is what will, the players who will make it happen. So, I don't know.
Nikita, are you here?
No, it's not.
Also, one thing that is very important, I think, to know that a lot of museums in Ukraine now are learned, and a lot of art from our Ukrainian museum are constantly every day stolen to Russia. And this is another thing that we will have to think and recreate, because like in Mariupol, like really a lot of museums in Kherson, when it was occupied, like most of the pieces were just taken out from museums. And it is also very, I think, important to say that, okay, so soldiers are coming to occupy the land, but also like intelligent people with education are coming to our country to choose what art they will take away. And that's also something we will have to think and probably bring back after victory. Okay, so it's really very painful question for me, and I continue to remember the part also that it's happening. But any questions? Something first. On the questions around history and time, I mean, this photo in some ways is absolutely timely, of course, but in another way, it's almost timeless because of the mode that it's being presented in. It can travel to many different kinds of contexts. It can act as an archive, it can act as a historical document. But in another way, there's a sense at which we almost, let me say this, it can be a memory of especially the posters of the whole certain kind of memory of the war. But I guess I'm also wondering, maybe also to the point of the question of the museum to come, the museum that could potentially be in the future. I guess I would be very interested in that symposium in a way to make, you know, what would come, but what's going to come next? I guess this is maybe another question also for Oleksiy. You know, we've been working on this exhibition, we've made it, we want to see, maybe it will travel, that kind of thing. But also, what do you see coming next, maybe for your practice? You spoke about it a little bit, Lesia, maybe Oleksiy, too. I don't know if Nikita is there too. We've thought so much about history painting, landscape. Also, maybe Oleksiy could speak about the humor that's in the show. That is something that's come up a lot, but hasn't come up tonight. So maybe you have a few thoughts on that, Oleksiy, and other people who know humor.
You should have been able to hear us.
Maybe someone else has comments or about the units coming.
Humor. Humor is Ukrainian humor is a phenomenally I consider and I would like that it would rise as a British humor. Because it's very, of course, unclear because it's based on very local things always, and here we have irony of 90s. They are like divided into two generations. I'm a generation second, and third generation is this new wave, and they were really very ironic. We were very serious guys, and they were very ironic. Everything went through humor, and they found us very boring when we just appeared. But now it's another level of humor because it's really, as you mentioned, Lesia Khomenko, it's I'm laughing, not crying. It's really in the most stressful situation, a lot of jokes rise, not even through art, but in society, in events. And I remember it from Maidan, because something very stressful, something very bad happened, and just everyone just who will imagine a joke, about it. It's brilliant, and it keeps society very it's built society together, I think, very much. But I think it's not translatable. A lot of things are not translatable.
That's road that it's time for less irony and
Yeah, it's correct. We are inside a very dark humor, and I think I was very curious about it from the very beginning of the war because, okay, it was not humor, but post-humanism condition and the human condition, and now the public in internet, in Ukrainian internet, it was like dozens of dead bodies, images of dead bodies, and everyone was. Every day we were looking at it, we were eating and looking at it, and I thought, what happened with us? Now it's a little bit removed, really. I think it's a quality. I think people would get crazy if they would watch every day like this. Now it's really, I don't know, this internet algorithm. Yeah, I agree. Everything. Yes, everything which appears in the internet is a weapon of course. Yeah. And also, I think it's not only humor, but some joyfulness, and maybe like loving, and starting from the words that we saw in 90s, but also now, like it can be dark humor, but it's also very joyful sometimes. And it's obviously a transformation, but the humor, that it's interesting. Like I remember so there was a moment maybe 4 months ago when everybody in Ukraine and in Kiev was expecting atomic bomb over there. So basically, people would leave thinking that okay, tomorrow we all can die. So that started that meme about. And I don't even remember how it started, but somebody.
Journalists. Yeah, some journalists arranged the orgy on one of the hills. Yeah.
Park in the center. So yeah, everybody. Yeah, Yosha, Oleksiy.
Yes, some people arranged the fake invitation for orgy party, and yeah, on the open air, and yeah, everybody liked that.
So basically, it was the idea. So okay, if we all gonna die, at least let's find some nice place, some hill from where we can see it, and enjoy it. And there was not. Like it wasn't real orgy, but everybody would talk about it and laugh, including all like politics. Like, okay, so how do we get on the wait list, or like how do we get in? What would be the best place in the year to actually see it well and enjoy that last moment? And you can say that it's a dark humor, but it's also what's very like we were based like. I think everybody made a joke about it.
And it was mentioned by the most serious and official mass media. It was treated as a serious thing because
In New York Times, the Times, but in Ukraine, everybody are talking about this orgy, how to get. So yeah, that's how it remembers something as it help us, I think, to. But I'm curious, Ksenia, did you see it also in like earlier boards?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I do think the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I mean, artists like Oleksiy Sai, we already talked about Tisko, Savadov, the series, the photographs, Bombas Chocolate, really iconic photographs of the miners in the Donbass region and tutus and dressed up ballerinas, and they're covered in, black soot, and their helmets are on, and it's just this complete incongruent. And I think that was really kind of a real kind of tongue-in-cheek moment as the Soviet Union was disintegrating, and these artists were kind of coming out onto the scene like bad boys, and I think that was going on though globally too. I mean, you had like in Britain the YBAs, and this kind of like irreverence for art and institution. I think you can consider it like a kind of global phenomenon at that time. But in the 2000s, I think it was a more serious time, but it was also a time where individuality. That's true. Irony was present, but there was less individuality. I think because of the emphasis on collectivity and kind of the group, kind of aesthetic. I think individual personalities didn't necessarily come through. But I think Tetiana Khodakivska is very funny. And she has a series of sculptures that are in the shape of torts or cakes and sweets, and she's constantly referring to that Soviet legacy and kind of showing us its kind of darker side as well. A bit like, to her work is almost like too sweet. It gives you like a cavity looking at it, or too big. Yeah, this is a very good question. I don't know, Inga, do you have something to add? Or?
Yeah, but not to the humor part, but probably to the question that Katherine mentioned about the future. And so, yeah, because I'm from Latvia, from Riga, and also somehow I've been thinking about this, these smaller countries that re-emerged after the Soviet Union broke, and like Latvia, Ukraine, Georgia, Central Asian countries that were once part of that violently united history within the Soviet Union, and when it broke, would kind of search for their legitimization and their histories and their art and everything in the West. And I think, and so in a way, like this kind of exhibition of this one narrative, one story of a story of Ukrainian art history is really important. And at the same time, it's also important in New York, but it's also important to, and I think we have started to do that once again somehow in a really forced way, to talk to each other. Because for me, working with Oleksiy Sai, Ksenia Malykh, and Nikita Kadan, I've learned, and Tetiana, I've learned so much. Like there are most of those artists, except the very contemporary ones like that wall, maybe the I wouldn't have known, even though we are neighboring countries, like we share a lot of that history, and we should somehow know more about each other. And I think so that is also something that we just need to do in the region, and I'm quite sure we will do, because already the there are different intersections, different collective projects, and how you can show this history of one nation, and you can also, intersect it and create these parallel narratives. But we can only do that when there is one moment when we can kind of see an overview, let's say. And yeah, so I think it's as important as to show this in New York, it's also important to show it in the region. And as important is to show as a story of one nation, to also see how it intersects somewhere else, like either in the museum collections in metropolitan cities or museum collections of your neighboring countries. Oh, no, I did. When's the next exhibition? Well, it's actually thinking, so when was the opening ceremony, we didn't think about it from the beginning, but on the opening, a lot of people came and said that actually this exhibition can travel. So we do think like that probably we can do it in other countries or other universities, or also, as Inga mentioned, bring it to like Europe. So that's our hope for the next steps for these exhibitions. And I'm sure there are, that's actually my, maybe it's last question, because it's relates to if anyone have questions. If not, so, like from here, sometimes we see Ukraine like a total frontline, although it's not, and there are people in cities that are living and doing art. So my question is like, what is happening with art and exhibitions and artists now in Ukraine? Are there any like exhibitions, openings, like in Ukraine itself now?
Yes. Sorry.
Can you tell a little bit about? Can you tell us?
Well, there is some art activities, and everybody is working, and people really appreciate when something is happening, and
You can go there.
yeah, you can, yeah. I don't think we will reach the number of art exhibitions and events, and museums are closed, but life continues, and we have and people really need something to need some events in their lives, even those who are in the war zone. They try to form a cultural
Actually, now when you
creation also, and I mean those who are closer to the front line, and in cities such as Kiev, it's more or less quiet, and I
even
would
in
say
the Kiev, sometimes it's when it's like, I remember just now this concerts, like, and in the middle of the concerts, or in the middle even of the movie, that will be alarm, and you have to stop everything and go like in shelter. Or for example, would be even in Kiev would be blackout, and the musician will continue to perform with some torches pointed on them and some small lights. So from one side it will continue, but basically it's also it's influence, right, of what is happening. And the same, I think, is I saw some also video from exhibitions that also during blackout. So you are going and watching the physical works, but with your own torch just to see it, because there is no light. And
in the very center of Kharkiv, there is a art centers, states, universities art center. It's originally made out of bomb shelter, built in Soviet times, and now it's working as a cultural center, and it's really a place where they are shelling Kharkiv every week, almost every day. So city is under constant bombing, and they gather in this Yermilov center named after Yermilov. Yeah, and it's
Actually, a huge city. It was a capital of Ukraine. And also we had series of concerts in subway. It was very popular in free time, I guess. And on Christmas time, I guess it was so events. It's only one in Kharkiv. It's only one safe place. So Christmas tree in Kharkiv was set underground. It was really, you know, it's quite a tale with a underground. It's a crazy. Yeah, but it was also in Kiev because it was built in the Soviet time as a shelter. So it's not like the nuclear shelter. So the subway is the safest place. Yeah. So for the first few months, a lot of people were living in the subways, both in Kiev and Kharkiv. And yes, there were a lot of concerts. And also one, I think, TV show, American, right, with Zelensky. So if Nikita is not here, I just wanna thank you to everyone for joining us. Not here. It's very important also time for us because we kind of all here and Nikita and Ksenia and Lesia, and this is the last week, right, of the exhibition. So if someone still wanna come, let them know, because this is what's happening in Ukraine now. What we can say that we don't know about tomorrow. So you know, let's be present in today, and thank you Inga so much, thank you so much, Ksenia, Lesia, and Lesia, and thank you everyone for being here, for being on Zoom. Thank you all for coming in person, and I just onward to the next project. So thanks.